Hey tubers, so today I have my wife's 2004 Ford Escape and I will be changing 4 of the 6 coil packs because 2 have already been changed. This has the 3-liter Duratec V6 in it, and in order to get to the coil packs on the back side you have to take the intake manifolds and stuff off, so I'll show you how to do that. I'm also going to pull all the plugs and do a compression check on it and change the Pcv valve because it's under the intake manifold on this car, and lower intake manifold gaskets, etc. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is disconnect the battery. We're going to disconnect the airbox and all of the linkage on the top of the intake manifold, and once we get that off I should have access to the back of the coil packs, and those will pop out. I believe they're 8mm bolts, and then they just kind of slide up, and then you can take the plug out, change the plug, and put the coil pack back in and put it all back together. So we have the airbox disconnected. Use a screwdriver to take the tube off of here. Disconnected the battery, 8mm wrench, and disconnected the PCV system, positive crankcase ventilation. Disconnected the throttle linkage, and I will be removing the brackets and putting them aside. And then I have to disconnect the EGR and the EGR sensor. I don't think I have to touch the DPFE. And then I disconnect all the vacuum hoses, and then the manifold, the upper intake manifold, should come off with these bolts. I believe they're either 8 or 10mm, and then I have access to the coil packs underneath, as well as the spark plugs, which are underneath the coil packs. So to get the feedback sensor off of the EGR system, you have to remove an 8mm bolt here, and then there's a harness that bolts over this, so you need a deep 8mm socket once you remove the 8mm bolt over it to pull the sensor off. Then you can get at the vacuum lines in the back and pull those off. And this car has a lot that need to be replaced. If they're like this and they leave black spots on your hand when they're done, they probably need to be replaced because they're brittle. Those in particular for the evap system, and that's what the gas vapors do to it. So that could cause a vacuum leak. And any hoses you see that have cracks and stuff in them like this one does probably should be replaced, so I'll have to run to the parts store and get some. We now have the upper intake manifold off of the Ford Escape. You want to make sure to cover your lower intake so you don't get dirt down in there. And these are the back 3 coil packs, all of which will be replaced. And these are the front 3, only this one's getting replaced. And I'm doing all 6 spark plugs, as well as the intake manifold gaskets, which you can see here. These should be replaced whenever you take the intake manifold off, because they compress. At least this is what I've been told. So I have brand new ones, and I'll probably run out and get a new vacuum line because this is very brittle and it's underneath the intake manifold, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to change later. I've removed the front 3 coil packs. All have 8mm bolts holding them in a cable. And now you can see down into the head, those are the spark plugs, and I'm going to remove them and replace them. To remove the spark plugs, you'll use a spark plug removal tool. This one happens to be 5/8, and a couple of long extensions to get down into the cylinder head. Crack each one loose, and then you can pull them out. These are the new spark plugs. They're Motorcraft Platinum AGSF32WM1A. To check the gap. They're supposed to be for the Escape between 52 and 56 thousandths. And these are set right at 56, and you check the gap by taking a gap tool like this, and you just kind of slide it in. I can't really show you with my hands right now because I have one hand on the camera, but you slide these tabs in there, and they'll tell you what it's gapped at. So these are right at 56 thousandths, so I'm going to put them in as is. I put just a little bit of Never-Seez on the threads. Makes it a lot easier to remove the plugs later on. But these should be good for a while. Well, I've gotten all 6 spark plugs and all 6 coil packs changed. I'm now going to replace the PCV valve, which is down in the engine right here. I don't know if you can see it. So you have to remove the fuel rail and the lower intake runners. And the part number for the PCV valve is EV-243, or Ford part number YF1Z-6A666-AA. I now have access to the PCV valve down here. You can see that I have removed the intake, all of the intake now, so not just the upper intake, but the lower one as well. Again, to do that you have to remove the fuel rail and disconnect the wiring harness, and this is what they look like here. This is how they'd sit in the car. You probably want to clean them. Those are the injectors, and those are the gaskets on the bottom. I have new ones, and you're supposed to replace them every time you take them off, so I am. So now, come back over here, and we can remove this PCV valve and install the new one. I've got to figure out what the trick is to get that out. I've now got the old PCV valve removed, and I don't know if you can see on the camera or not, but it's got a little groove into it. So instead of just like the old school PCV valve that just slips in the slot, this actually you have to, it sits in there kind of like this, and you really have to, it's more like this. There's a square piece on the top here, and the way I got it out was I took a flat blade screwdriver and I tapped it till it unscrewed, and then I could get my fingers on it because it's kind of hard to get your hand down there, and then I wiggled it out. So now I have to get this rubber hose off, and I'll install the new one, and then I can clean all of this crap up. You probably want to take your shop vac and suck everything out before you do any work on it. You can actually see the valves in this motor, or the intake valves, excuse me. With the intake off, it's actually kind of cool. You can see quite a bit down in the motor. So these are the old lower intake manifold gaskets, and you pull them out with a pair of thin needle nose pliers. They just slip right in there, and these are the new ones, and you just basically take them out of the package like so, and once you get a hold of one, you line it up with the hole here just like this, and you press down until it seats into the hole, and then you've replaced the lower intake manifold gaskets. In the upper intake and lower intake manifold gasket kit is a gasket for the throttle body and the idle air control motor or solenoid. So I'm also replacing those as well. To take the throttle body off while you have the intake off is two 10mm bolts. You do need a deep socket for one, and that's in this corner here, and you pull the gasket out the same way you did with the lower intake manifold, and you push it back in. This is the new gasket that's already installed, and I'm also going to install the new gaskets in the bottom here. I've now got the intake into place. I've got to tighten all the bolts down and reconnect all the vacuum lines. You can see I replaced all the evap vacuum lines here. I believe they're for the evap system, because they're through the EGR, and they do connect to at least this one's for the evap system. So you can see I've got it all back together. Once I get everything bolted down, I'm going to take the idle air control motor off, clean it, and replace the gasket on it as well. And then I've got to repair a frayed wire here, and then we should be able to start it up. I've got the upper intake manifold bolted back down, and I've taken off the idle air control motor. It's not too dirty. I cleaned it probably 5,000 miles ago, if that. But I'm going to replace the gasket because I didn't have one when I did it last time, and I'm just going to shoot some throttle body cleaner in there anyway because it was stalling in reverse. Unless you blip the throttle, it probably needs to be replaced, but I'll do that at a later date. Again, two 8mm bolts that hold it on, and the gasket comes out just like the rest of the gaskets do and goes in like just the rest of the gaskets do. Well, we've got the entire top end back together. Everything is plugged in and it's running.